It's a condition which has no cure and is 100% fatal for animals that contract it. And as of January 2024, chronic wasting disease, or CWD, has made its first known appearance in British Columbia, right here in Cranbrook.
Well, it can spread throughout populations, and of course our deer in British Columbia, and especially in the Kootenays, a number of them migrate to different parts of the Kootenays. The animals in the wintertime all come in from the mountains and kind of congregate in winter range, and they interact, and then they head out to different places.
CWD is a degenerative condition which affects ungulates such as deer, moose and elk, attacking the animal's brain and eventually leading to loss of coordination, muscle wasting and eventually death. The disease is spread through nose-to-nose contact, but also through a protein or prion which can survive outside the body of the host.
So they're very, very resilient proteins that once you get them in the environment, you have a really hard time getting rid of them.
The province is watching the East Kootenay very closely, with deer samples predominantly from hunters being submitted for testing. But BC Wildlife Federation's Jesse Zeman says it's the high-density populations of urban deer which are of particular importance.
They are a perfect vector for CWD, and that gives us even more kind of motivation or more impetus from a science-based perspective to manage deer densities down inside of cities.
And while only 3 known cases have been identified in the East Kootenay, Zeman says that number could be much higher, as there are still more than 800 samples outstanding.
So when you get a lot of animals in a small area, and they get CWD, then it kind of can rip through the population. Once you get about 20% of the population impacted, then CWD just kind of takes off. And so that's the point where, you're not going to get to put the genie back in the bottle.
In order to manage the spread of CWD in the region, Zeman says more provincial funding is required.
When this first started, what we saw was big lags in testing time to results. And a system that wasn't properly funded. I mean, funding is going to be the place where all of this starts and stops. And so we should have hunter harvest coming in. We should have the heads being processed, samples and testing done within a couple of weeks. We should have funding available if we need to go in and do increased sampling in areas or to reduce the deer population in areas.
And when it comes to who is responsible for taking action, Zeman says that's a balancing act between the province and the municipalities.
Definitely outside of cities, the province is entirely responsible. Inside of cities, I think it's a case of the province working with the municipalities to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that this is in the best interests of wildlife.
While there's currently no known transmission between ungulate populations and humans, the widespread recommendation is to not consume meat which has been infected with CWD, which makes managing the spread of the disease that much more important.
The future of wildlife in the East Kootenays is at risk. People's food security is at risk. And we know that management is the best tool, and management costs money.
For more information on chronic wasting disease, visit www.bccdc.ca. For Rogers TV in Cranbrook, I'm James Farnan.